If you think about the United Arab Emirates, what's the first image that I know immediately comes to mind?
For most people, I'd say it's oil.
Exactly. For decades, it's been defined by oil. Colossal engineering, massive national wealth. This sort of state-planned transformation of, desert rock into incredibly complex energy infrastructure.
They really are the global standard for that kind of heavy, deep underground construction. It was all built to manage and protect what was, for a long time, their most critical commodity.
Crude oil and gas.
That's their legacy, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that expertise in deep engineering, in managing these strategic assets way below the surface, it's pretty much unparalleled globally.
But the pivot that's happening now, it feels like it's driven by something much more fundamental.
It is. It's driven by the inescapable realities of geography and climate. I mean, this is a question of national survival. They are taking that exact high-stakes, national-scale engineering mindset.
The oil mindset.
The oil mindset, yes. And they're applying it to a resource that is now, without a doubt, fundamentally more critical to them than oil.
Potable water.
Fresh, drinkable water.
And that is exactly what we are diving into today. The UAE is quietly, almost methodically, building what is set to become the world's largest strategic reserve of desalinated water. We're talking about storing over 20 billion liters underground.
And it's so important to understand this isn't just, a utility project. It's not just a bigger water tower. This is a staggering national security maneuver. It requires a total overhaul of policy, of engineering, of their entire philosophy on resources.
It feels like the ultimate resource transition.
That's a great way to put it. They're basically trading the operational strategy they perfected in the oil age, the deep storage, the reinforced security, the long-term planning, and applying it wholesale to water security in an age of climate scarcity.
It's a literal engineered hedge against global water volatility.
It is.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to go way beyond the high-level summary. We really want to cut through this simplistic idea that they're just filling up giant holes with water.
Right, because it's so much more sophisticated than that.
We need to explore the specific how and the truly existential why behind this strategy. That means we're going to delve into the sophisticated geological engineering, the unique, almost brutal environmental pressures of the desert that make this necessary, and how this project officially elevates water from a public utility to a question of genuine national sovereignty.
This is a crucial deep dive for anyone who wants to understand what happens when a nation with immense capital, immense engineering know-how, confronts the ultimate geological and climatic limitation.
To really get the scale and, frankly, the cost of this deep storage strategy, we have to start with the vulnerability. The sheer, almost terrifying vulnerability of the UAE's existing water supply chain.
Yes, it all starts with the geography. It's raw, it's uncompromising, and it dictates everything.
Right. When we say scarcity here, we're not talking about, putting rock in your toilet or running conservation campaigns. We are talking about an existential void.
A total void. You're looking at a nation that has zero permanent, sustainable, year-round river systems.
Yeah.
And rainfall is so scarce, it's basically negligible for sustaining modern, high-density urban populations like Dubai or Abu Dhabi. Yeah, it just doesn't factor in.
So that absence of natural hydrology, as you call it, means that for the UAE to even exist as a modern, prosperous state, they had to bypass nature. They had to do it with technology.
And the source material really hammers this number home. The UAE relies on massive, high-energy desalination processes for more than 90% of the drinking water it consumes.
More than 90%. That figure is.
It's just staggering.
And it has to be almost unique among major global economies.
It is. And what that degree of dependency means is that their water security is entirely 100% dependent on their energy security.
And that linkage, that direct connection, creates an immediate linear collapse scenario. It's what defines their entire national risk profile.
Precisely. Think about it. If those massive centralized coastal power plants, which are the engines driving the whole desalination process, if they shut down, the water supply doesn't just, gradually decline.
They collapse.
It collapses almost instantly. Water production stops cold, and the cities, all of them, begin to run dry within hours, or maybe a few short days at best.
It's an immediate, high-stakes dependency that offers literally zero margin for operational error.
None.
So what are the threat models they're planning against? I mean, it can't just be a general mechanical failure, can it?
No. The threat modeling is very sophisticated, and it's directly informed by their location in, a geopolitically volatile region. The threats are really threefold.
Okay.
First, you have a massive-scale power failure, a grid collapse. If the electricity stops, The pumps stop. Simple as that.
Right.
Second, and this is a big one now, is cyber attacks. Desalination plants, their pumping networks, they're all run by SCADA systems and integrated digital controls. A sophisticated attack targeting these control systems could halt operations completely, even while the physical pipes and buildings are
A
untouched.
digital shutdown.
Exactly. And third, and maybe most obviously, is a regional crisis or conflict. Because these plants are massive, they're easily identifiable, and they're located right on the coast.
Making them incredibly vulnerable.
Extremely vulnerable to military targeting or, some kind of disruption during a regional flare-up.
So that proximity to the coast, where you have the input, the seawater, and the processing, the desalination, all happening in one place, it basically transforms their entire water system into a single massive point of failure.
It does. And the water becomes a ticking clock because production can never outpace demand for very long.
And that vulnerability, that's the catalyst for this whole strategic shift we're talking about.
That's it. In an environment like that, water can no longer be categorized simply as a public utility to be managed day to day. It has been officially reclassified, it's now a strategic asset, and crucially, a question of sovereignty.
That framing, a question of sovereignty, is so important. It implies that controlling and protecting the water supply is now on par with controlling their borders or their currency or their strategic energy reserves.
It's the same level of importance. They are viewing national survival through the lens of guaranteed liquid security, completely independent of the daily operational flows from the coast.
And if you look back at the country's history, how they manage their strategic oil reserves, you can see the pattern, can't you?
The pattern is crystal clear. They understood very early on that oil wealth, while vast, had to be protected, managed, and controlled across decades. And they used heavy, reinforced infrastructure to do it.
In a harsh desert environment, the only variable you can truly control is the engineering.
That's the only one. You can't control rainfall. You can't always control geopolitical stability. But you can build redundancy. You can build security. They learned how to secure their energy future by building deep, reinforced infrastructure. And now they're applying every single one of those lessons to securing their water future.
So if the Achilles heel is that 90+% dependency on real-time production at the coast, this strategic reserve is designed to buy them one thing. Time, when that production stops. But what's the goal? What kind of time buffer are they aiming for?
The scale is pure national security planning. The projects are engineered to create a strategic reserve of over 20 billion liters of high-quality drinking water.
And just to be clear, this is not some small holding tank.
No. This volume is specifically calculated to be sufficient to supply major urban centers, think the entirety of Abu Dhabi or Dubai, for a period of weeks in a crisis scenario.
Weeks, plural. That is an enormous cushion.
That time buffer is the entire point of the project. It transitions them from a state of instantaneous collapse to a state of managed response. It buys them the critical weeks they would need to repair damaged infrastructure, or maybe mobilize international aid, or just wait for a geopolitical situation to stabilize.
So it's a transformation from zero margin to weeks of protection.
And that transformation is what defines true strategic resilience.
Yeah.
But it requires an enormous, sustained, and very expensive engineering commitment.
So let's get into the nuts and bolts. How are they actually storing 20 billion liters of water? Because the source material is very, very clear on this. This is not some simplistic, casual operation.
Absolutely not.
The idea that the Emirates are just, finding natural caves and filling them with water, it completely misses the point. It misses the sophisticated, controlled, two-pronged engineering strategy that's at play here.
That's right. We really have to clarify the technical sophistication. The system uses two major distinct methods that work together in conjunction. The first, and often the largest component, is known globally as Aquifer Storage and Recovery.
ASR. Okay,
Yeah.
I've heard that term, but how does it actually work? And how is it different from just, drilling a well and finding a pocket of water?
It's the complete opposite, really. It's a highly managed process. ASR involves taking that high-quality desalinated water that's produced at the coastal plant,
The water they just made.
the brand new water, and pumping it, often through pipelines that run hundreds of kilometers inland, and then intentionally injecting that fresh water deep into specific geological formations using strategically placed wells.
So they're not taking water out, they're putting it in. They're using the desalinated water to charge the underground structure. But what kind of structure are we talking about here?
The structure is the key. And this is a really common misconception. We are not talking about underground rivers or hollow caverns or big empty caves.
Okay.
We are talking about porous structures, often deep sandstone or carbonate rock layers. You should think of them less like a sponge, which kind of implies easy compression,
And more like what?
more like an extremely dense, high-porosity natural filter. The water is held within the tiny pore spaces of that rock structure itself.
Okay, so the water isn't in a big pool, it's held within the material itself. But
Yeah.
how do they stop it from just dispersing, spreading out into the surrounding environment? Desalinated water is much less dense than the brackish, super salty groundwater that's naturally present in the desert subsoil.
That is the core engineering challenge. And it's also the beauty of how ASR is implemented in the UAE. The geological formations they select are naturally sealed, both above and below, by thick layers of impermeable rock.
Like shale or clay.
Exactly, shale or clay. Those layers provide natural confinement. But the real mechanism that holds the pure water in place is the creation of a deliberate freshwater bubble,
Huh.
or lens.
The freshwater bubble.
Yes. Because the injected desalinated water is so much purer and less dense than the native brackish water, when you inject it under pressure, it effectively pushes aside. It displaces the native water. It creates a stable lens of high-quality fresh water that's essentially floating on top of the denser saline groundwater.
And they control this bubble.
They manage it meticulously. The pressure they apply during injection, what engineers call a hydraulic head, is precisely managed to maintain the size and the shape of that bubble, ensuring it doesn't migrate away or, crucially, mix significantly with the surrounding salty water.
So they are using the geological structure as a natural protected containment unit and then using pressure management to maintain this stable, pure reserve. That must require immense control over the input.
It does. Total control.
So what are the benefits of using ASR over, just say, building a giant concrete tank on the surface?
Well, ASR offers complete physical protection from any surface events, and we'll get into just how severe the desert challenges are in a minute, and it offers unparalleled thermal stability.
Meaning the temperature stays the same.
It stays constant, and that is absolutely vital for preventing biological growth and for preserving the chemical stability and the quality of that water over potentially decades.
Okay, so that's ASR leveraging natural geology and pressure management. But the sources also say they use a second method, one that relies entirely on human construction. If ASR is so effective, why do they still need to spend all that capital building massive artificial tanks?
Right. That second method involves what are called excavated and lined underground reservoirs. You can think of it this way. If ASR is the slow, deep, truly strategic reserve, these lined reservoirs serve as faster access, highly controlled buffers. They're often closer to the points of withdrawal or to the urban network itself.
So these are basically gigantic subterranean bunkers for water.
That is a perfect description. They are massive engineered storage facilities, often lined with concrete and sealed with advanced geomembranes to ensure zero leakage and zero external contamination.
And they're connected directly to the city's water grid.
Directly. They're more expensive per unit of volume than an ASR system, for sure, but they offer two critical advantages.
Which are?
First, they offer immediate volume control. You can get the water out much faster than from an ASR well field. The withdrawal rates are higher. And second, they can be built in areas where the geology might not be suitable for ASR.
So where the rock is too fractured or maybe it lacks those necessary confining layers of shale.
Precisely. These are pure civil engineering dominants. They provide yet another layer of resilience alongside the ASR systems.
And this combination, the ASR and the lined reservoirs, it defines their whole operational philosophy. It marks this huge strategic pivot from their historical dependence on continuous, just-in-time production.
It is the systemic shift. It's moving from the produce and consume in real-time model to a comprehensive new strategy of produce, store, and protect.
For decades, those desalination plants just ran at maximum capacity during peak demand, right? Delivering water straight to the tap. If production dipped for any reason, the taps could run dry.
That was the risk.
And this is where it gets really, really interesting for me. They are actively building this resilience by leveraging their energy infrastructure during non-peak times. They're essentially creating water insurance with their spare energy capacity.
That's the economic and operational nexus. They leverage the off-peak capacity of their desalination plants, at night when energy demand is lower, or maybe midday when their solar and nuclear plants are producing maximum power, to relentlessly pump water into these deep reserves.
So they're transforming a potential energy excess into guaranteed water security.
That's exactly it. The system actively moves water out of the immediate consumption cycle and into a protected deep storage state. And that's what gives them a multi-week buffer zone that simply did not exist when the entire system was reliant on immediate, just-in-time production from the coast.
We've established the why, the need for resilience, but I think we need to dive a little deeper into why this storage absolutely must be underground. I mean, why can't a country with what seems like unlimited capital just build vast concrete surface reservoirs like you see in many Western countries?
Because the desert environment isn't just harsh, it's systematically destructive to surface infrastructure, especially anything involving water.
And the temperatures are the obvious immediate killer.
Oh, absolutely. And we need to put a number on that. The source material highlights that temperatures there frequently exceed 45 degrees Celsius
That's 113 Fahrenheit.
for extended periods of time. Now, at those sustained temperatures, if you have a large exposed surface reservoir, the rate of evaporation is simply catastrophic. Experts estimate that in high-heat environments like that, you can lose several centimeters of water depth per day across a wide area.
Losing centimeters of water a day across a reservoir that spans, what, square kilometers? The daily volume loss must be colossal.
It is. It would mean they'd be spending vast amounts of energy to desalinate the water in the first place, only to stand by and watch a huge portion of that expensive, high-quality product just vaporize into the atmosphere.
It's a losing battle against physics.
Fundamentally, surface storage in that climate is economically and environmentally inefficient from the get-go.
And evaporation is only the first layer of vulnerability, right? Surface water also becomes a magnet for contamination.
A huge magnet. Think about the environmental events that are just endemic to that region. You have massive, frequent sandstorms,
Which would dump tons of dust and particulate matter straight into the water.
instantly contaminating it. Then you also run the risk of biological growth, like algae, because the water is constantly exposed to intense sunlight and high heat.
And I imagine you also have to worry about things like salinization, contamination from surface runoff. It just becomes a constant battle to keep it clean.
It becomes an immediate, constantly monitored weak point in your entire national infrastructure.
So the subsoil solution isn't just some clever strategic option. It is an absolute necessity, driven by the need to bypass all of these inherent inefficiencies and climatic liabilities.
It solves all of those problems at the same time. The underground placement offers 4 critical and simultaneous benefits that, together, transform water into a predictable, reliable, strategic asset.
Okay, let's run through those benefits.
First, you have thermal stability. Deep underground, the temperatures are stable and far, far cooler than at the surface. That minimizes any thermal expansion and helps preserve the water quality.
Second would be evaporation.
Evaporation control. When the water is shielded by layers and layers of rock and earth, virtually zero evaporation occurs. They protect every drop of water that they invested so much energy in desalinating.
That efficiency gain alone must justify a huge portion of the capital cost of building this.
A massive portion. Third is physical protection. The water is shielded from sunlight, which, as we said, prevents biological growth. It's protected from sandstorms and all other weather events. This preserves the high quality of the desalinated water over a multi-year storage horizon.
And finally, there's the big one, the strategic benefit that links all the way back to national security: protection against external threats.
That's the fourth and, you could argue, the most significant benefit. By storing the water deep underground in these decentralized ASR networks and protected lined reservoirs, they're treating it exactly like critical energy infrastructure.
It's hardened and it's distributed.
Exactly. Imagine if an adversary or even a major industrial accident were to compromise a single central visible surface reservoir. The entire national supply is immediately threatened.
But a vast, scattered network of deep ASR wells and protected reservoirs, that's incredibly difficult to compromise on a national scale.
Incredibly. It forces any potential threat actor to expend exponentially more resources to achieve even a fraction of the impact.
So this decentralization and protection, it moves their water security out of the realm of chance and into the realm of state-controlled, engineered protection.
And in a highly volatile region, that transformation turns water from a vulnerable commodity into a truly protected and predictable resource. It insulates their essential lifeline from those immediate geopolitical risks.
When we try to visualize this project, the numbers, tens of billions of liters, they can feel a bit abstract. I think we need to ground that scale in the reality of the engineering. How is it actually structured?
It's achieved through a very systematic, modular, and nationally integrated network. It's not one giant tank.
Right, the source material confirms that. It notes that the officially released projects detail these modular networks that collectively add up to those tens of billions of liters at the national level. So we are talking about multiple mega reserves that all function as one connected system.
Correct. And to give you an idea of the modularity, individual ASR systems, so one site, are engineered to handle storage capacities in the range of hundreds of millions of liters each.
And that architectural choice, that modularity, must be crucial for redundancy.
Absolutely. If one ASR site suffers some kind of localized geological anomaly or maybe an operational fault, the National Reserve as a whole isn't compromised. The failure is isolated, and the other modules in the network can compensate.
Now, storing high-quality desalinated water deep underground for potentially years at a time, that raises some major questions about maintaining the quality. This can't just be a giant passive water tank. It has to be an actively managed environment.
It requires extreme vigilance. It demands advanced quality assurance, using monitoring systems that are far more sophisticated than anything you'd need for a typical surface water treatment plant.
And what are they tracking?
They're constantly tracking 4 key variables in real time: water quality, hydraulic pressure, salinity gradients, and the geological integrity of the formation itself.
Okay, quality is obvious. You need it to be drinkable when it comes back out. But why the obsession with pressure and geological integrity?
Pressure management is the secret sauce of ASR. It is absolutely crucial for maintaining that freshwater bubble we were talking about earlier.
I see.
The engineers have to ensure that the injection pressure, the hydraulic head, is high enough to create and maintain that stable displacement zone, but at the same time low enough that doesn't compromise the mechanical integrity of the confining rock layers above and below.
So what happens if the pressure drops too low?
If it drops too low, that denser, higher salinity native groundwater can start to encroach and mix in, degrading the quality of your reserve.
And if the pressure is too high?
You risk inducing microfractures or movement in the geological formation. That could potentially allow your precious freshwater to migrate out of the sealed zone.
Which is why the geological integrity monitoring has to be continuous.
Continuous. They use tools like seismic arrays and precision borehole monitoring to make sure that those impermeable seals haven't been breached, preventing any mixing.
So the key takeaway here is that the water is not stagnant in these reserves. This is an actively managed, living reservoir, and it's subject to the same kind of strict safety protocols you'd see in the energy sector.
Exactly. The operational protocols demand mandatory controlled circulation and periodic testing.
Meaning the stored water isn't just sealed and forgotten about.
Not at all. Portions of the water are periodically withdrawn, they're tested, they're retreated if necessary, and then they're re-injected. This ensures constant quality and prevents any localized stagnation or undesirable changes in the water's chemistry over time.
And you're saying these safety protocols are on par with those used in high-risk critical energy infrastructure?
Yes, which just demonstrates the high-stakes nature of the entire operation. They are treating this water with the same level of care as a strategic petroleum reserve.
This level of engineering, of active management, it brings us to the inevitable question of cost.
Of course.
Desalination is famously energy intensive. Pumping water hundreds of kilometers inland is energy intensive. Drilling deep wells and injecting water against existing hydrostatic pressure has to be intensely capital and energy intensive. Compared to nations with natural snowmelt and rivers, the cost per cubic meter must be astronomical.
The cost is high, there's no question. In absolute terms, the investment in capital, in energy, in technology, it's enormous.
Yeah.
However, the sources really clarify the core desert justification for this.
Which is?
The cost of not storing water costs infinitely more.
Right, because the cost of failure is total societal collapse. It's economic paralysis, geopolitical instability. The engineering cost just becomes the necessary insurance premium you have to pay for national functionality.
That is precisely the calculation. And this leads to a really critical discussion about how they manage their resources. Historically, the UAE used its oil revenue to purchase security.
And now?
Now they view energy itself, which, by the way, they are increasingly sourcing from massive solar projects and nuclear power. They view energy as a manageable resource.
Something that can be produced, purchased, or diversified.
Exactly. Fresh water, on the other hand, is the non-manageable resource. It's the one thing that their geography fundamentally denies them.
So they are trading the manageable resource, energy, to acquire and protect the non-manageable resource, water. That's a complete reversal of the traditional input-output model.
It is a total reversal.
Yeah.
And as the cost of energy drops, when it's sourced from these massive dedicated solar farms and their new nuclear fleet, that lower marginal cost makes the deep injection process, which is very energy-intensive, financially viable as a strategic investment.
So they're hedging against the future cost of scarcity by maximizing their use of cheap, low-carbon energy today.
That's the hedge.
This really positions the UAE not just as a wealthy desert state, but as a kind of extreme laboratory of water adaptation in a hostile environment.
It is a laboratory, absolutely. They are proving that high-cost, high-tech engineering can effectively replace non-existent natural hydrology. The subsoil is becoming their river system.
And the lessons learned there have to be globally relevant.
Immensely relevant. As water stress increases all over the world, similar ASR experiences and strategic underground storage projects are being intensely studied by other arid regions.
Where specifically?
All across the Middle East, in North Africa, of course, but also in water-stressed parts of Australia and increasingly in the arid regions of the United States, particularly the Southwest.
But the UAE has a competitive edge, right? Something that other nations find hard to replicate immediately.
They do.
Yeah.
And that edge really lies in three dimensions. First is just the massive scale of their capital investment, which allows them to build in redundancy from the very outset.
Okay, so money.
Money is one. Second is the seamless national integration of the system. This isn't just one city's project. It's a national plan. That ensures cross-Emirate support during a crisis. And third,
Their experience?
their accumulated, decades-long experience in heavy underground engineering, which they perfected for the oil and gas industry. They already had the institutional knowledge and, just as importantly, the financial mandate to treat this water challenge as a definitive national priority.
So if you had to pick one, what stands out as the most challenging aspect for other nations that are looking to replicate this? Is it the capital or is it the geological expertise?
That's a great question. I would say it's often the integrated management. While many regions actually have suitable geology for ASR, very few have the institutional framework to manage the full cycle.
You mean from desalination all the way to quality control?
The whole chain. High volume, continuous desalination, long-distance pumping, precision pressure injection, and the sustained, decades-long quality control protocols that have to run nonstop. You need state-level integration and a kind of political patience that often transcends typical election cycles.
It's a long-term resource commitment that demands very determined short-term political will.
Absolutely. And it's an investment in resilience that really only pays off when the main system fails, and that's a unique political calculus.
So let's try to synthesize the massive scope of this project for everyone listening. The UAE has, it seems, successfully taken its entire legacy of complex underground planning.
All those lessons learned from building reinforced oil vaults and deep tunnels.
Right. And applied them to the literal survival of its civilization. By making this profound transition from a real-time, just-in-time consumption model to this meticulous produce, store, and protect strategy, they have engineered a gigantic cushion.
A cushion of response time.
Exactly. And in doing so, they have fundamentally mitigated the central existential vulnerability of their climate and their geography.
They identified the single critical flaw in their system, the instantaneous collapse of supply if the coastal desalination plants are ever compromised. And they built a solution that is so hardened, so secure, and so deep beneath the surface that it effectively removes water security from the daily geopolitical calculus.
It turns a geographic liability into an engineered asset of national sovereignty.
That's it in a nutshell.
So what does this all mean?
Well, our entire conversation today has been about water being intentionally injected into the rock and critical infrastructure being carved into the rock.
Right.
So consider this as a long-term geopolitical shift. For the last century, global power and strategic wealth were fundamentally measured by oil flowing out of the ground.
That was the metric.
That was the metric. In this new, high-tech, resource-stressed future that we're entering, the ultimate measure of national security for an arid state might be protected fresh water being stored deep within the earth, secured by the very same engineering that once secured their energy exports.
That's a powerful thought. The value is no longer in what you can extract, but in what you can protect.
Precisely. And that leads to the final question for you to think about. What other essential resources that are currently treated merely as high-cost commodities are waiting to be converted into protected strategic assets through these kinds of high-cost, massive, long-term underground engineering projects?
Food, data, genetic material.
Who knows? But this strategic deep storage model could fundamentally redefine how we think about resource management for the entire coming century.
A fascinating and, I have to say, a slightly unsettling thought to mull over, especially as climate change continues to redefine what scarcity even means on a global scale. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today and for providing the sources that allowed us to really unpack this incredible national strategy.
My pleasure. The engineering challenge here is only rivaled by the policy vision behind it.